Hi everybody, I hope you're all well. This is part 29 of 31 Days in August. There's only 2 more of these to go, so I haven't got a clue what I'll be doing after this. It's not going to be the end of the daily videos. I'll probably do a video on Saturday, and I will be doing the raffle for all the people who have given me 2 numbers over the course of this whole 31 Days of August random comic videos reviews that I've been doing. I'll be doing the raffle on Sunday, so the video everyday thing isn't going to stop abruptly. It's not going to have to go cold turkey, shall we say. Back to today's comic. There are 3 series of comics that to me make up the 80s, the 1980s. They were all written by the same guy, and I would say that the 3 comics that he wrote that mean a lot to me are still true today as they were way back then, what, about 25-30 years ago. The series are Watchmen, V for Vendetta and Swamp Thing, all written by Alan Moore, and like I said, especially ones like V for Vendetta, and certainly some of the topics that were picked up by in the Swamp Thing series, they are still as true today as they were then. Today's comic is Swamp Thing Annual number 2. Now, in this, Abby Arcane has just been killed by her uncle Anton Arcane, and if you've read the recent Swamp Thing series that's out by DC Comics, you'll know who Anton Arcane is. He's the main protagonist against Swamp Thing, and the Swamp Thing feels that Abby's life has been taken away from her way too soon. It's not her time for her to die, and he decides to go into the spirit realm and retrieve her soul. He starts off by travelling through the green, which is a trick that he's learnt to do fairly recently by dying in, or making one of his plant bodies die in one place, travelling through the green, and then regrowing a brand new body in another place completely different. With this, it's a bit different because he goes past the green into the whole web of life, if you will, where he comes across Deadman, Boston Brand. Deadman is helping a woman find her son. They've both died in a car accident. The woman's been walking around in this strange mist and haze for, to her it seems like forever, but she can't remember how she got there. The last thing she remembers is driving her car with her son in the back, and she turns to tell her son to behave himself because he's making a noise and he's singing a stupid song that she can't it's annoying her. And then the next thing she knew, she's woken up in this strange place. It turns out that she has died, and her son has been holding on to life in the physical realm and has finally passed over. And Deadman brings him to his mother so they can both pass on into the light. Swamp Thing explains to Deadman that he's looking for Abigail Arcane's soul, and Deadman turns around to him and says, "Well, if it's here, chances are she's gone through to the other side. I haven't seen anybody else around here apart from this woman and this boy so far recently." The Swamp Thing tries to, or he battles with the idea of passing over into the other side and seeing God or whatever deity may be on that side. interesting thing with this is that Deadman says that he is a she. Of course, he's only going by his own interpretation of the deity. The deity he's always dealing with is Ramakrishna, who was the female deity that enables Deadman's soul to travel around the physical realm and take possession of people to do, change people's lives for the better and to help people out in times of need. Deadman says that he can't take the Swamp Thing to the other side, but he knows a man who can. So enters a stranger, the Phantom Stranger, who guides Swamp Thing to, I suppose it could be classed as heaven. It's explained that the area that they enter through when they go through the light is not necessarily heaven, it's a facet of the idea of heaven. This is where Swamp Thing meets Alex Holland, the person who Swamp Thing believed he was before he came to the realization that he wasn't actually Alex Holland. It was only a small spark of the essence of Alex Holland that actually brought the Swamp Thing to life and gave him physical form. As the Phantom Stranger and Swamp Thing travel through this heavenly realm, they enter a place that I could probably only describe as what could possibly be called purgatory, neither in heaven nor hell, where they come across the Spectre, which is a character that used to be one of the most powerfulest, I suppose the most powerfulest spiritual character in the DC universe before the reboot. The Spectre was originally a police officer called Jim Corrigan, who was murdered by the mob, sealed in a barrel filled with concrete and killed. He was then given the chance to avenge his death as a spirit of vengeance and the embodiment of God's wrath. He has been he's been portrayed as being exceedingly aloof and almost to the point of not caring about humanity, and the only thing that actually tethers him to this world is the human soul that he's bonded to, the Spectre is bonded to. It's this human soul that the Phantom Stranger tries to persuade to get the Spectre to allow them to travel on to the next realm, which is hell, or at least something that could be perceived as a hell-like dimension. When you read this comic, you can see where Scott Snyder and Lemire, I'm terrible with names, the guy who's writing Animal Man, have gotten their idea for the Rot and the realm of the Rot. I'll show you a picture. I mean, this is just a picture of the outskirts of the Hell realm. And reading Animal Man and Swamp Thing nowadays, you can, and reading Swamp Thing in the past, you can see where they've got their ideas for the Rot and all the other facets that is going on in the Animal Man and Swamp Thing series now. As the Phantom Stranger and Swamp Thing are travelling through this realm of hell, they come across the demon Etrigan, who is a rhyming demon. I believe is a 5th level rhyming demon, which means that everything he says is in rhyme. He says that he's going to help the the Phantom Stranger and Swamp Thing to locate the soul of Abby Arcane, even though her soul shouldn't really be in this realm. As they go further into hell, you meet all the weird and strange demons that are dwelling in that realm, until eventually they come across the spirit form of Anton Arcane. He is now a grotesque, bloated figure, as his body is being ravaged by insects and their larvae. Interesting bit with this is the conversation between Arcane and Swamp Thing. Arcane asks the Swamp Thing what the physical realm is like now, as it must have been years since he died and passed on into this hell realm. The Swamp Thing turns around to him and says, "You've only been dead for a day," which shows that in this realm, time runs much more slower than in this world, and one day in this world can be a lifetime in the hell realm. They eventually come across the soul of Abby Arcane, and a massive fight ensues between Swamp Thing and the demon Etrigan to save the soul of Abby Arcane. The Swamp Thing grabs hold of Abby's soul and saves it, taking it back to the real world, where the Swamp Thing wakes up and Abigail Arcane slowly opens her eyes, and she doesn't realise what's happened. She doesn't know what the whole travels that the Swamp Thing has had to go through to save her. And yeah, as the snow falls down around them, the Swamp Thing cries because he's happy that he's managed to save the woman that he loves. This is an absolutely fantastic comic. I know I say that the comics that a lot of these comics that I've reviewed are brilliant, and if you can find the trade paperbacks, you should pick them up. But Alan Moore's Swamp Thing series was a turning point in comic books. At this point, even though people who didn't read comic books still perceived comics, even now people still perceive comics. I mean, only today I had somebody turn around to me whilst I was at work and I was reading a comic, and they turned around to me and said, "How old are you?" And I said, "What?" This is reading a comic, they're for kids. And I was like, "You've obviously never read a comic in the last 20-30 years then." You know, and then I just ignored them and carried on reading. You know, and then when this comic was written, that stigma of reading comic books was even more prevalent. You didn't have all the movies that were coming out, and you didn't have all the high, you know, all the famous people coming out saying, "Oh yeah, I read comics. Or I used to read comics when I was younger." You know, comics weren't the hip, cool thing. You didn't have the hipsters that you got now, who say, "Oh yeah, I read comics," even though they don't. And they if you turned around to them and said who Peter Parker was, they'd say, "Oh, is that the guy that wrote Spider-Man?" True story. I actually had somebody who thought they knew about comic books, and I said to him, "Who's Peter Parker?" And he said, "Oh yeah, that's the guy that wrote Spider-Man first, wasn't it?" I just said, yes, of course, and walked away. So, you know, I mean, when this series was written in the 80s, comics were just on the turning point where they were no longer just for kids. You had the Superman and Batman, which were still perceived as being only for children, but then you had things like Swamp Thing that were written by Alan Moore, which just opened the floodgates for much more mature and better written comics and much more interesting comics to be written. As I've said with loads of other comics as well, but definitely with this one, if you can find the trade paperbacks with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing in, which there are loads of out there. I believe nearly every single one of the ongoing series of Swamp Thing has been put into trade paperback. I'm not too sure about the annuals. But if you can get hold of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, then you won't be sorry, as far as I'm concerned. It is a series that it will blow your mind when you read it if you haven't read it already. And if you have read it already, then go reread it again, because it's a fantastic series. Yeah, that's today's random review for comics. I have no idea what I'm going to be reviewing tomorrow, because I don't know until I wake up in the morning and go diving into my comic boxes and see what I've got. As I said, Friday will be the last random review video for 31 days in August, and I have no idea. I've got a slight idea of what I might be doing after this. It won't be daily videos, but I'll see how it goes, and who knows, it'll probably surprise all of us. Yeah, so thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to make a comment down below, please do so. If you like the video, thumbs up. If you don't like the video, thumbs it down. And as I always say, if you thumbs it down, say why you didn't like it. Say why you thumbs it down. It's not that hard. If you can press a button that thumbs down and down, you can type on a keyboard to say why you didn't like it. Yeah, I'm starting to say which means I'm running out of things to say. So I was just left to say thanks for watching. See you tomorrow for another completely random comic. Take care and ta-ta for now.